Good morning, Elliot. How are you feeling today?
Morning, I'm good.
It's great to hear. Okay, so last time when we met, we talked about your dad, your mom, your brother, your grandfather, and it was nice to learn about your story. So today, I've brought you a storybook, and I would like to share this story with you, which I find quite similar to your story. So, what do you think?
Sure, that sounds great.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay. So I hope you will enjoy the story later. So let's take a look at the cover page of this book. What can you see in this cover page?
I can see a dark forest as a
Mhm.
background, then a boy and a girl.
Mm-hmm. What kind of relationship do you think they have?
Maybe they are siblings
Mhm.
or friends, maybe.
Okay, that's a good guess. And you might be wondering what they're doing in the forest at night, isn't it? It's quite curious. Where do you think they're going to?
Maybe they're going home.
Mhm. So we might find out later, right? How their home looks like and how the story unfolds. What about you? Let's talk about your home. How do you think your home looks like to you?
My home changes a lot because sometimes I'm at my dad's place and sometimes I'm at my mom's place. So it changes.
It must be very difficult for you to keep changing the homes. Yeah. Okay, so this storybook is published by Future Ace, and it's actually one of the classic fairy tales. And the title of the storybook is Hansel and Gretel. So you might be curious about what the story of Hansel and Gretel is about. Yeah. So we will read this together, and for the first few pages, I will read for you, and you may need to continue in some of the parts. And after that, I will continue to read for you, and we will have some quizzes in the middle, just to make the session more fun. Okay. So after we have finished reading, we will talk about your feelings about the story. So how does that sound to you?
Sounds okay.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at Hansel and Gretel's story. All right. Hansel has a sister called Gretel. They live with their father and stepmother near a forest. There is a famine in the land.
Why is a famine?
A famine? Okay, famine is when you don't have enough food to eat. So you can see here the family lives in a poor condition. So how their clothes look torn, and they have a small house. Yeah, so they live in poverty. Alright. So they have so little food in the house. You can see how the father is worried here. And one day, the stepmother had a talk with the father. She said, "We must get rid of the children," suggests the stepmother. But the father reluctantly agrees. So Hansel and Gretel are very sad when they know about this. "Don't cry, Gretel," says Hansel. "I have a plan." What is the plan here?
When the parents are asleep, Hansel fills his pockets with a lot of pebbles.
Good. Okay, so from this picture, why do you think that Gretel is crying?
Because the parents wanted to get rid of them.
It must be quite surprising for them to hear that, isn't it? So, but the brother, Hansel, had an idea. But how do you think the pebbles might help them to solve this problem?
Maybe it can help if they encounter any scary animals.
Maybe they can throw.
Yeah, can
Right,
protect
because the forest
themselves.
can have some scary animals, isn't it?
True.
Yeah, so let's find out what they're gonna do next. Right, early the next morning, the stepmother wakes them up. She says, "We are going into the forest to get some wood." And she gives each of them a piece of bread. But on the way, Hansel keeps dropping a pebble at a time. And in the middle of the forest, their father asks them to collect some wood to make a fire. Okay, so what did the father ask them to do in the forest?
to collect some wood to
Yes.
make fire.
Okay, very good. All right. So they were stopping to take a rest, and the stepmother said, "Lie down and wait for us here. We'll be back after we finish cutting some wood." So Hansel and Gretel know that their parents will not be back. How do you think they feel at this time?
They must feel sad, scared.
You can see on their faces, isn't
Yeah.
it? Okay. So they were waiting there until the night comes. And when the moon comes up, they can see the pebbles. So they follow the pebbles home. And their father is happy to see them. Now, after a few days, they are short of food again. "We must leave them deeper into the forest," says the stepmother. So that night, Hansel wants to collect pebbles like before, but the back door is locked. Yeah, so this is quite a crisis, isn't it? So what do they need to collect before they go to the forest?
Pebbles.
Right, so they cannot get the pebbles. So what do you think will happen to them?
I think they get lost in the forest.
They're gonna get lost without the pebbles.
True.
So how can they solve this problem?
Maybe they can replace the pebbles with something else, maybe?
I think that sounds a good idea. So let's find out what they do next. The next morning, the stepmother gives each of them a small piece of bread. On the way, Hansel keeps dropping some crumbs, thinking that they will show them the way home. So you can see him dropping the crumbs. But unfortunately, some birds follow them and eat up the crumbs. So after a while, they are tired and hungry because the bread was not eaten, right? They used it as a trail. So because they're tired, they fall asleep. And when they wake up, their parents are gone. So how do you think they were feeling in this situation?
I think they must be feeling very sad and scared because Gretel is crying.
Yes, you can see that Greta is crying, and Hansel as a big brother must feel worried and scared in the situation. So they walk and walk in the dark to find their way home, but they couldn't find their home. So they're frightened. But before long, what did they see?
There's a small cottage up the hill.
They can see a light from far, and it actually comes from a small cottage. So when they reach the cottage, an old woman opens the door. "Come in, my dear. Make yourselves at home," says the old woman. How do you think they were feeling when they saw the old woman?
They must be glad that someone is saving them from the forest.
Yeah, when they're feeling scared, they were hungry, so it must be very reassuring to find something, a place that they can rest, right? But they didn't know that she's actually a wicked witch. So when they were in the old woman's home, the old grandmother offered them some food, and she said, "I know you are hungry and tired. Help yourselves to the food on the table." And after eating, they become so tired that they fall asleep there on the table. But when they wake up in the morning, they immediately saw that they were tied up. "What are you doing?" says Hansel. "I'm going to bake you in the oven," says the witch. Scary, isn't it? So they're small children. Do you think they can fight back with the witch? Alright, what's gonna happen if they do that?
I think the witch will get angrier.
So how do you think they can solve this problem?
I'm not really sure.
Alright, so let's find out what happens next. So when the witch is asleep, they loosen the ropes and untie themselves. So they wait for the witch to be asleep first so that they can plan out their way to escape. And before they escape, they grab some gold coins and they manage to escape from the house. And when they manage to find their way home, and their father is happy to see them again. So Seems like it has a happy ending. Alright, so that's the end of the story, Elliot. How do you find the story?
I actually enjoyed the story. Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, it's quite adventurous, isn't it? They encounter many problems, and you see how in the end they manage to find their home again. Right. Okay, so we're going to talk about your feelings about the story a bit more later on.
Sure.
So Elliot, we have talked about the story of Hansel and Gretel, and I believe that we both enjoyed the story a lot just now. Alright, and I'm very happy to share the story with you. But I would like to remember and have a recap about this brave story. Could you please help me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you a few questions. So just try your best to answer based on what you remember. Okay, so in the story, what happened to Hansel and Gretel in your own words?
So in the story, Hansel and Gretel's parents left them in the woods, and they managed to come back home by following the pebbles. But in another situation, when they didn't have the pebbles, they met the wicked witch, and they managed to escape the wicked witch and got home safely.
Yeah, it ended with a happy ending. So what did they do to escape the witch?
They helped each other. So when the wicked witch was sleeping, they untied each other's ropes and escaped.
Yeah, and we've talked about how Hansel and Gretel helped each other a lot during their journey. Relating this to your story, have you worked with someone to escape from bad things before?
I actually worked with my brother in the game that we play. So we worked together to fight the monsters.
That sounds interesting. So, in that game, how did you work together?
So basically, whenever I'm injured, so my brother will help me to fight the monsters for me, and he will get the medical tool to help me get better in the game.
I see. So it seems like you enjoy playing adventure games with your brother.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah. So how did you feel when your brother helped you in the game? How did you feel at the time?
I feel more brave and confident that we can win the game.
That's really nice. So you usually you support each other in the games, and you manage to fight the monsters really well. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so we've talked a bit about the story, and we tried to recap about how the story goes. And if you notice, I've asked you some questions relating to your life. So I would like to know more and explore how you feel about this story and how you can relate this story to your current life. So first of all, here I have a number of characters, if you remember. Right, we have the father, the stepmother. Can you remember this character?
The wicked witch.
We have the wicked witch,
Hansel, and Gretel.
Yes. Okay, so all of these characters in the story. So among all these characters, which character can you relate to the most?
I think Hansel.
Yeah. Hansel is the elder brother in the story, right? And I think you are also the oldest brother. Yeah. So I'll put your name here. Okay. So this is, let's say, in this case, you relate the most to the character of Hansel. Okay. So let's go through the characters one by one, and we talk about the parents first, the father and the stepmother. Okay. What do you think of Hansel and Gretel's parents in the story?
I feel like they don't love Hansel and Gretel because they're trying to get them away, like they're trying to get rid of them. So I don't think they love them that much.
It sounds like not something that a parent would say, isn't it? But if you remember, the father was happy every time that every time they found their way back home. So why do you think he feels that way?
Maybe he does love his children, but maybe he doesn't put his effort much in protecting them.
I can understand where that's coming from, right? So even though he knows that, he still let the children to be left in the forest. Okay. So based on this impression, do you think that they are good people?
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe only the dad, because only him who cared a bit for the children, but I don't think the stepmom is a good person.
All right. Thank you for sharing your views, Elliot. So we also learned that in the story that the reason why they left the kids at the forest is because they didn't have enough food and they cannot afford to to get enough food for themselves. So in this story, it looked like the parents find Hansel and Gretel as a burden. But as we have discussed before, that the father is still happy to see them. So it doesn't seem like the father see them in that manner. So the hardship that they were going through is the famine, but not the children. And it seems in the story that they are smart children. They managed to solve their problems in their own way. And so surely the father should be very proud of them. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
So based on this story, do you see yourself in this situation?
Sometimes I do feel like it's my fault that my parents are not together.
I see. That must be very difficult for you because you need to rotate and change homes between your mom and your dad. And I'm sure that you want them to be back together again. But I just would like to understand when you have to rotate between your mom and dad and you have to visit them again, how do you notice their reactions were like to see when they were seeing you?
Actually, they're quite happy. I can see that whenever I come home, like they will greet me with a smile and like excited to spend time with me.
That's very nice. That's good to know. So I think based on their reaction, I don't think that they would find you that it's your fault that they're no longer together, right? So how do you feel knowing that?
Maybe I feel better because like maybe they still love me because they're still happy to see me.
Right. So I think it somehow relates to the situation with the father in Hansel and Gretel story, because even though he might not be the perfect father, he has his own shortcomings. He wasn't able to protect them well, but you can see in the story that he still loves his children and that he still tries his best to appreciate them, right? So I think even in your situation, I think it seems to me that your parents are trying their best to spend time with you, and it seems that they do still love you, and you are not in this situation. You are not the fault or the burden, as what we have discussed in the Hansel and Gretel story. All right. So I will just put here that your father and mother in this situation would relate the most to the character of Hansel and Gretel's dad. Yeah. Okay. So next, let's talk about the heroes in our story, Hansel and Gretel. So in this story, we learn that they help each other a lot when they encounter many problems, and how do you think that they were able to survive despite all those problems?
Because they have each other and they help each other out.
They did like support each other, right? I think a lot of the times Hansel did a lot to help Gretel in that situation, but even Gretel being bad, he was able to become the brave brother, right? So usually when we have having someone by our side, it will feel less scary when you're feeling sad and lonely. So these people in your life can make you strong enough to face the problems that you're having. So can you try to relating this to your life? Can you think of someone like that in your life?
I have my brother and my friend and also my grandpa.
That's really nice. Okay. We have a few names that you might want to share. Like, what about your friend? How do you usually find support from them?
So I always hang out at Christian's house. So I also spend time with his family, which is lovely because they're very close to each other.
Okay.
And yeah, for my grandpa, we're very close as well. And he sends me to school every day, and he picks me up from school, and we bond quite a lot.
That's really nice to know. So you have someone to rely on at school, and you also have support system at your home as well, right? And there are also adults that you can rely on and trust when you're stuck in this situation, right? Okay, so I think I'll put all three of them as Gretel in this case because as the Hansel, your support system will be your brother, your best friend, and your grandfather. Okay. So I think all in all, Elliot, we have learned that in this story we can learn how, despite many problems where you will feel sad and you will feel scared, especially these feelings is a reaction to your parents' shortcomings, right? You can still have the support system, such as your brother and your best friend and your grandfather that you mentioned before. And I think that will be the key takeaway from this story. What about you? How do you feel about the session today?
I feel like it's a great session today because I can really relate to what Hansel and Gretel is going through, and I feel that there's a lot to learn from this story.
Yeah, it's good to know that you say that because it's good to know that you feel that way because when you can relate to a story, it means that you're not alone in this situation, right? You're not the only person who's going through a problem like this, and there are people that go through the same thing and also feel the same way that you do. So I think it's reassuring in a way that you can share those kind of feelings with someone else. Yeah, and I hope we can do more sessions like this in the future.
Yeah, hope.
All right. Okay, thank you for sharing your views today and thank you for spending your time with me today.
Right.
So see you next time, Harriet.
See you.
Okay.
Thank you.